So good morning, everyone.
Recording in progress.
Good morning. We're calling the meeting to order, and let's start with roll.
Chair Eagleson Chesowich,
Present?
Vice Chair Roman,
Present.
Board Member McKinnon,
Present.
Board Member Heinrich,
Present.
Board Member Pease,
Present.
Board Member Willis. We have a quorum.
Right. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes. We published on Monday morning an additional agenda item since the packet was published on the week of December 18th.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. And then is there any public comment on items that are not on the agenda?
Yes, I have two. First is from Leland Francois.
Okay. Public comments will be for 3 minutes, and we will be enforcing that time limit out of fairness to all participants, just so everyone's aware.
Good morning, Chair. Let me pronounce your name. Right.
Eagleson just left the chair.
All right, Leland and fellow board members of the Palo Alto Historic Resource Board. My name is Leland Francois, and I want to make it a point to come before the board here at the beginning of a new year, 2024. I attended several meetings about two to 3 years ago, before the onset of the pandemic, and I'm not from Palo Alto, even though I do operate a structural preservation sole proprietary firm. I'm from the old Ravenswood community, also known as, I can't really say also known as East Palo Alto, but the two are pretty much interchangeable these days. And I'm working on a special project, at least I was 3 years ago, involving the United Nations, which is what I call the Blue Baton Project. And it's acknowledging all the structures, residential structures that were part of the United Nations effort in 1945. And the entire Bay Area was involved, Palo Alto was involved, San Francisco, Oakland, Ravenswood. And these buildings should be preserved and recognized for our succeeding generations, just by reason there wasn't any record keeping maintained since 1945, between 1945 and 86 years later today. So I'm going back on behalf of the United Nations Association of Oakland, and I'm identifying the structures. There are several structures in Palo Alto. I believe the Duveneck family was pretty much popular at that era of time, but the old Ravenswood community, fortunately, we were blessed with a much recent activity directly from the United Nations Habitat Program. And they're endorsing this effort simply by reason the UN did not maintain records 86 years ago. So I wanted to bring it before this board, and I'm looking for some assistance to try to identify some of the earlier structures that were used and utilized by the dignitaries or part of the process during the 1945 United Nations era. My contact information is there. I left some information with you. This is going to be funded by the old Ravenswood Garkis products. I'm the inventor of a lot of the products that are pictured in the brochure here, and I'm using that to finance this effort. So if you're interested, you can contact me. I'm having a monthly meeting at the old church at 2201 University Avenue in Ravenswood every month on or about the 24th United Nations Day. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for providing your contact information. Yeah.
And next is Darlene Yapley.
Staff's presentation at the 12-14 meeting showed the Joint Powers Board Caltrain as submitting an objection letter for both the University Underpass and the Embarcadero Underpass. Staff stated they are on the objections list for January unless we do that differently, just with council. I kindly request the HRB and staff to not separate these two properties from the rest of the objecting properties for the January 25th meeting. In the spirit of consistency, fairness, and transparency, they should continue to use the same process, criteria, and categories for all properties, residential, commercial, and city-owned. The Joint Powers Board Caltrain is similar to fellow objectors regarding the concerns of being listed on the inventory, even though they do not have an issue with devalued property. The public should be able to review and comment before the HRB takes action in an open public meeting on all objecting properties using the same process, criteria, and categories. If objections are not honored, should also apply to the Joint Powers Board Caltrain. Next topic, Mountain View. Mountain View City Council met on December 12th for their historical project. Examples of key items they agreed on. 1, survey properties that are already subject to development review and CEQA. Keep in mind, this was based on Mountain View community input received during outreach. There was broad support for this. This is unlike the Palo Alto community input, where the majority of each of the 3 groupings object to being listed and being on the survey and would have not wanted to be surveyed again. 2, previously opted off properties would not be included in the survey, but would be sent information. 3, recognition that more incentives are needed beyond the Mills Act. Pursue and propose additional incentives beyond the already in place Mills Act, such as grants. Once the survey is concluded, the Mountain View ordinance states initiation of individual historical resources by the council. The application will be processed only if the owner agrees in writing to such designation. So even if your home was surveyed, you have to opt in for historical designation. In summary, Mountain View decided on survey properties based on community input, did not require formally opt-off properties to participate, is considering benefits beyond the Mills Act, and requires the property owner to opt in to be listed for the new survey. Section 365470. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional public comments on items not on the agenda or comments online?
No, that's it.
Okay. Then let's move on to the first agenda item and the staff report. Or, okay, meeting calendar first. Do you want to do that first? Yeah, that's fine.
Good morning. Amy French, Chief Planning Official. In front of you is the schedule for meetings upcoming, and we can defer this discussion of dates to after the main items if you'd like. Just to reiterate, this is what is currently listed on our upcoming meetings, and we do have that target of February 23rd as an evening community meeting, which is intended to replace the regular February 22nd date. Is there, did we need to go backwards to items not on the agenda? Sorry. Maybe, whatever. I'm going to proceed. I'm acknowledging in the room that there is a conversation, and I'm wondering if there's a request to go backwards and have items not on the agenda. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, it's just unclear when my comments would be appropriate.
Well, we have,
not knowing exactly the item.
Yeah.
We have
Is
two.
it,
yeah.
would you be okay doing it now? We can go back. Okay, let's do that.
Thank you, and I apologize. Karen Holman. So speaking about preservation generally, and good morning, you all. Thank you for your service. I've been watching and deeply involved in this for like more than 20 years, and including with CEQA. Good morning. And I find it just very dismaying. I could speak for 20 minutes on this. I find it very dismaying because I don't think the public can be expected to care more than the city does. The city does not manage an inventory. The city doesn't keep an updated inventory, even though it's required by the state. The city hasn't updated its inventory since it was first established, and I think something like 1989. The only properties that I'm aware of that have been added are ones who want to get added to be a category 2, so they could then get TDR benefits. There are properties that have covenants on them that aren't even listed when you go to a property report or a parcel report on the city's website. They don't even show up. So how does an owner know? How does staff know when they're reviewing? You have to dig deeper to find out. And I can give specific examples if anybody's interested. I've turned in a property that has a covenant on it, and whether it did or doesn't, it doesn't really matter. It's, you know, a painter, I asked him to look at it, and he said, the house is rotting. It's got paint literally peeling in sheets off of the house, and it's got a covenant on it. And the city has a maintenance requirement in the code. And yet the person who went out and looked at it for code enforcement said, I don't see any issues. I sent photos and followed up, and there's just been nothing. It used to be that to replace windows, you had to get a permit. A lot of us in the community were told, who care about this stuff, were told that even though a permit isn't required, a review would be necessary for those properties that are on the inventory. I can't tell if that happens. It seems like even though you have to get a permit for a roof, it seems like you could put a red tile, clay roof tile on an Eichler these days. It doesn't seem like there's any sensibility at all. And what is the review? Furthermore, the purview of the HRB, and I've talked about this for literally decades, that this is the only board or commission that reports to another board or commission. That really seriously needs to change. You need to report directly and make recommendations directly to staff. It really diminishes your authority and the status of your board to report to another board or commission. What else? I mean, there's so many things. Also, the National Register eligible, those don't come to you all for review. That seems to me that would be a public meeting, so the public can weigh in, so you guys can weigh in. It's strictly at staff level. Same with those properties that are determined eligible for the California Register. They don't come to you all either, although they're historic resources. So it
That's
seems
3
like that should be the
minutes.
case. But anyway, those are just a few of my comments. Thank you very much.
Let's continue on.
Okay,
with the
so
report.
this is now on item 2. This is our third meeting to show the groups. We've batched into 3 public hearing meetings of recommendations from our consultant regarding properties previously found eligible and confirmed to continue to exist and have integrity that warrant eligibility to the local inventory, and recommendation to council to place them on the inventory. Today, we have 43 properties on the docket, 41 of which were in the original group for January 11th, and then 2 properties that were postponed by owner request from the December 14th meeting. And then we have these 3 groups, just overview. 28 properties found significant due to association with persons, 9 properties found eligible for the California Register of Historical Resources through individual historic resource evaluations, and 4 properties that were found eligible back in 2000 that are the sites of ongoing or previously approved projects that our consultant found still eligible for the local inventory. So again, as in prior meetings, I'm doing a presentation, then the goal is to have the HRB comment, and then we'll go through each slide with the red asterisks indicating the objections received for those addresses. So I think this again reflects at the bottom here that we are planning to have, we've been stating that the meeting on January 25th is the meeting that the HRB will receive and consider all of the properties for which objections have been received and make a recommendation on those. So we have another item, the item that was added, item 3 today, that enables the HRB to have a discussion about what is expected to happen on January 25th to give comfort to the persons that are objecting to their properties being listed. Just at the bottom of this slide, again, this is how the state of California operates. The consent of the owner is not required for nomination, but a resource cannot be listed over an owner's objection. We think this is the correct approach to follow, and we've been behaving as such, staff. So again, this slide I've shown before that gives what the State Historic Resources Commission does in their protocol. And if anyone has questions about that, we can return to this slide. Again, we do these considerations during these HRB meetings in batches when there are multiple properties that are with the same criteria, the local criteria that we have, and then we move to the next batch. So there are 28 properties that are considered eligible for local inventory associated with persons. And so these are the various criteria on the left. And then we have the property addresses to the right. You can see that there are a number of objections that have been received for those properties, and those are shown with red asterisks and red text. Just doing an overview here. Then we have these properties that are eligible for the California Register that have been found to be such with historic resource evaluations. These have either been requested by the applicant because the property was shown as potentially eligible, and our comprehensive plan says that before we allow demolition, we must evaluate them for eligibility for the California Register. So these are those properties, and we've had 2 objections from that batch. And then we have 4 properties that have ongoing or approved project. Again, these were identified back in 2000 as National Register eligible, and they have construction occurring or approved. So with that, we can have a general discussion perhaps, and then move to the actual series of,
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd like to take public comment.
right.
Or, yes.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there are public comments.
Currently, I have 2 speaker cards. First is from Marion Odell.
I believe she should be speaking on the 3rd item. She might be confused on the. Yeah. This is item 2, correct?
Correct. Okay, we'll move that comment to agenda item 3.
Then Carolyn Godfrey.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Godfrey. My husband Hal Prince and I have owned the property at 211 Middlefield since 1988. Our house is proposed for the Historic Registry because of its connection with Earl C. Thomas, who was a mayor of Palo Alto and who lived at our house from 1926 to 1939. We believe that this connection to Mr. Thomas is ridiculously inadequate to justify putting our house on a historic register. Surely 99% of Palo Altans have no idea who Earl C. Thomas is. They wouldn't know or care where he lived. Therefore, we're protesting against our house's inclusion. Make no mistake, we love our house. But even we can't claim that it's of any particular architectural interest. It's a very plain house. Sadly, it was crushed by a tree last March, but we're rebuilding it to look exactly as it did before. We've registered our objection to being included in the inventory. We understand that some people believe that If only we were educated about the benefits, we wouldn't object. So please educate us, but then let us make our own decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there additional public comments on agenda item 2 now?
Yes.
Okay.
Next is Susan Dunn.
Hello, my husband and I are the owners of the property at 509 Coleridge Avenue, which is proposed for inclusion based on its association with a former president of the Southern Pacific Railroad and perceived architectural quality. I just want to say that my husband and I love our house. We don't intend to make any changes during our lifetime, but we do not feel we should bind the hands of future owners as to what they need to do. Two comments in addition to those of the prior speaker. I'm sure you're aware there's a nonprofit organization called the Palo Alto Stanford Heritage Organization, and they help owners of property understand their architectural and historical value and commemorate them with plaques after 100 years. I think this type of voluntary education and preservation is highly commendable, and maybe there are things you can do to help them be more effective. But the second point about our property in particular is, our lot is 100 by 150 acres. So even under today's zoning, it could be subdivided into 2 residential lots. I'm sure we're all aware that under California's housing initiatives, there's a recognized need to provide additional housing in Palo Alto and honestly throughout California. This is an example of where I just don't think it's appropriate for those of us living today to bind the hands of future people who might be addressing issues that they consider more important than the historic and aesthetic considerations that you are supporting. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next is Kusum Pandi.
Hi, good morning. My husband and I are owners of the property at 1965 Cowper. And I appreciate the opportunity to address the council. We are new to this entire process, and we were caught quite off guard when we found our name in an article online with comments attributed to us and our address and our names. And so we're kind of coming to this as novices. And so a couple points I wanted to make, and I apologize if this is not the format to do it, but I feel like the entire process is extremely ambiguous and very cloudy. So as property owners, having our property designated on this list, for example, we received a note card in the mail from the Planning and Development Services informing us of the December 14th meeting. However, the card itself was postmarked on December 20th, and it landed in our mailbox on December 21st, leading up to the holidays. So we were not even aware that this entire process was going on. We found out after the fact. Since then, we have organized with our fellow community members who are also dismayed to be kind of looped into this process. While we have immense respect for the city that we live in and for the council, and also for the Historic Registry Board, which obviously is doing important work, we fundamentally feel that as owners, we should not be forced to have our property listed if we don't agree with that. And there are numerous reasons why we don't. Number one being, there's no clarity here. There's no set guidelines. We as property owners don't necessarily see or understand the value that supposedly being on this registry would provide us. Conversely, we do see a lot, we understand the burden and a lot of the red tape. And again, I reference back to my original comment about just the entire process being really convoluted and ambiguous, and just, we don't understand it. So to be forced to have our property and other community members forcing property owners who are great community members, nobody's planning to, I don't know, do something outrageous and whatever.
That's 3 minutes. Please wrap up.
I think we all love the environment and the atmosphere of Palo Alto, and we want to maintain that without being forced to have our properties unduly burdened. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next is Geeta Svikantan.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So I own the property at 385 Waverly Street, which is downtown North. And I too did not know about this process and kind of accidentally found out because one of the neighbors on Waverly was kind enough to alert us to this possible nomination of properties to the Historical Resources Board. And I was sent a letter of objection to that to the city. And I noticed that I too received a card in the mail for the December meeting the day before the meeting. So it was really badly timed, I would think. So the process itself seems to be a little shrouded in, I don't know, a kind of ambiguity, like the previous speaker said, and not enough notice has been given to the homeowners about what's being done. And for my own property, I would like to point out that it was remodeled 10 years ago, so it is no longer the original historic property. And the reason it seems to be on the list is because it was built in 1900 and occupied for a few years by people who worked at Stanford. So I feel the reasons to nominate it seem rather slim, and I do not see any advantage in having it be listed. And until I understand the advantages and I'm given the chance to think about it and decide if it needs to be on the list, I'm not sure that it's appropriate for just putting it on the list like that. It seems very ambiguous the way it's being done. So I'd like to object again to this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Diane Jeanette.
I live at 330 Cowper Street, and our house has been nominated because it is a significant contribution to Black history here in Palo Alto. And we're actually really pleased that Palo Alto is honoring the Black history by nominating our house for inclusion. And as the nomination mentions, the Black history of Palo Alto has not been written. So although I've lived in that house for 35 years and lived in Palo Alto for 40, it was only a chance that a friend of mine saw that on the AME Zion Church, the one that was saved here in Palo Alto by Ruth Ann Gray and other people, that the founding of the church happened in our home. And I feel like that I really want to support the Black history being told. Through my own research, I came to understand that within our neighborhood, there are significant other resources that would tell the history of Black contributions. For instance, on the corner of Cowper and Everett, there is Fran's Market, which was there for many, many years, at a beloved neighborhood store. And that really needs to be preserved and documented. And the Henson family was there for, I think, 50 or 60 years. So we urge Palo Alto to step up and take some responsibility for researching and publicly honoring this Black history. And I asked the consultants when we were going through this process, and I agree with some of the previous comments that we haven't had a lot of time to think about this, and this was a big decision. But I was told, I said, how will people know? This is this significant resource, an example of a Black family lived in there for two different ones for over 50 years, starting in 1904. And they said, well, you can kind of work with another organization or it'll be up on the website. And I don't think that's good enough. So to preserve this historical link, we are willing to take the risk of the things that have been talked about here, the significant possible downsides. But I also want to know what Palo Alto is going to do to make this really a part of Palo Alto history so that people know about it, know about what happened in this neighborhood and other neighborhoods, and what the contributions of the families have been through plaques or events or collected historical, this is the time for
That's
oral
3
histories.
minutes.
So we'd cooperate in any way. And we'd like to learn about the Helms family that lived there and other Black families in Palo Alto. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next is Karen Holman.
I'm not so rushed this time, so hopefully I won't sound so manic. Apologies for being so rushed before. This is a topic that can be quite divisive and quite dividing of a community. So it's really important that this body and the city staff pull people together to understand the importance as well as the benefits of having an historic inventory and having properties that are exemplary of the history. They express the culture of the community and the values of the community. There are a good number of benefits to being on the inventory. The State Historic Building Code, which if I were to guess, I'd say probably most people in this room have never heard of. There are also a list of benefits having to do with FAR, floor area ratio, and setbacks that are listed. Do people in this room even know about those? Have they heard about them? It seems like the notifications are lacking, so don't know what the root of that is, but it's something certainly that needs to be corrected. Nobody likes a surprise. About providing housing, ADUs, of course, are allowed on the same property as an historic property. It would be rare. I can't think of an example, but it would be rare where it wouldn't be allowed from my perspective. There were areas when the survey was done 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. There were areas that were identified as potential districts. But over time, because the city doesn't do anything to educate people about demolition or to even consider an alternative to demolition, homes that are in perfectly good shape that are 20 years old are getting torn down, which because we don't see the impacts of that, we don't even count it towards our SCAP goals. There are huge environmental impacts to demolition. The potential districts that I mentioned, one is a person here mentioned being on Coleridge. Coleridge had, I don't remember how many blocks, but 3 or 4 blocks that were that district I doubt would now be present because there's been so many demolitions. Some of the people who are associated with these historic properties, I very much appreciate the speaker who spoke about Fife. That's a really important history of that area. It is our Black communities where it was focused, and that kind of thing should be brought forward. But your obligation, from my perspective, is for education and to help people understand the benefits and the purpose and the reason of historic preservation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then next we have two online. First is Simon Firth.
Hello. Let's see, I'm trying to, I don't know if you can see me. I don't see a way to turn on my camera, but anyway, I've spoken with you before and I don't want to repeat myself, but I just want to note that the 2131 Harvard Street, which is our house, is listed as being looked at or eligible for its association with people. And the survey, the new survey, actually determined that that's erroneous, that the person with whom it's associated is not worthy. I mean, he's a perfectly nice guy called Jack Albee, but he's not necessarily, doesn't have any historical significance. And so the house was, so you have it listed on the staff report as being eligible for that reason, but that's actually not what is found. And my question is, given that it is no longer seen as eligible for the California Register, how do we get that communicated to the California Register? That's something that I mentioned in an email to Amy French, and I'm happy to follow. If Amy, perhaps you can follow that up with me. At some point, I would like to understand how we do that. And I think the fact that it's found ineligible for persons, but the surveyor, your consultants found that nevertheless it was a perfectly nice building that was representative of its time, and therefore it should be included on the city inventory as a category 3. And there are many buildings in our neighborhood. I live in College Terrace, including one across the street built by literally the same builder, which is not on the inventory because it wasn't looked at or considered eligible back in 2000 or 1999 or whenever that was. And the fact that our house is on there and the other house isn't is emblematic to me of a real problem with this whole process, which is that it's not comprehensive, that it's just sort of taking those, a subset of buildings that happen to have this eligibility back in 20 years ago. And I think I'd be much more comfortable if the resources board and the city did a comprehensive survey, as it sounds like you actually should be doing at some fairly soon, and really thought seriously about, okay, what do you want to protect? Why are you protecting? What is your definition of history? And then come up with a list, and then let's have that discussion. But I think prior to that, it seems like this is all premature and relatively, well, not relatively, absolutely arbitrary. So that's why we've asked for not to be put on the city inventory for now until those discussions have been had. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next is Lydia Callaghan. If you can unmute yourself, you have 3 minutes.
Thanks, everyone. So sorry about that. My name is Lydia Callahan, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak this morning. I'm one of the many homeowners who've been unfairly impacted by this process. Also, as some of the previous speakers mentioned, I did not receive any notification of this process and found out because of friends and neighbors. And I believe this is just a real unfair tax on my time and finances having to go through this process. I absolutely love the historic nature of Palo Alto, and I don't wish to have it destroyed and overbuilt. But I feel, as one of the previous speakers said, this community is not a community that's going to tear down and destroy historic homes. People understand the value of a historic home. And I really feel that this effort is very suspiciously close to the state's passing of SB 9, which would allow eligible lots to be subdivided. And I also feel that this process really opens the city council up to litigation, as I feel many homeowners will, if this continues, be forced to sue the city. So I really urge the Historic Review Board to rethink this process. And also, I urge you to pass a resolution clarifying that this process is opt-in by owners and that objecting owners are now excused from having to participate from this process. So thank you so much again for this opportunity to speak, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any further public comments or additions?
No, that's it.
No? Okay.
Okay, I would like an opportunity to go through each and every one of the speakers because some of them gave addresses, the last speaker did not. So
Sorry,
I have
is
no.
there
Yeah, so if the last speaker, Lydia Callahan, is still observing, it would be helpful, Lydia, if you could send me your email because we're very careful about the notifications. We sent certified letters to every, for the December 14th and the January 11th meetings. We sent certified letters, and I'll get back to the other ones after the speaker.
Okay, yes, so we can open it up to additional public comment on this agenda item.
And if you do have a comment, you can submit your speaker card to Veronica. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Colleen Braff. I'm fourth generation Palo Alton, part of the Thoits family. I grew up in the house at 939 Forest, which is on the list. We remodeled the house 10 years ago. We were very, very careful about keeping it in keeping with the historical style. Like we had to remove the porch. We put it all back exactly how it was, kept the original windows, original doors. I'm an architectural designer, so that's very important to me. I'm on the Palo Alto Historic Association, and I've helped research the 100-year homes and given them plaques. So we are leaning toward moving forward with this, but it's the not understanding the value of being on the list. And also the process seems a little cloudy. I did receive a certified letter in December. So that's how I knew about this meeting. We went down to the city, my mom and I, she still lives in the house, and met with Christina and really tried to figure out what are the benefits, what are the, burdens. And I still feel unclear on all of it. So just want to let you know, we are leaning toward it, but we do need more information.
Thank you.
And then Jerry Smith, I think you wanted to speak.
I'm Jerry Smith at 162 Bryant, and I'm not skilled at public speaking, so I'll be reading my remarks. I already expressed objection to placing my humble bungalow at 162 Bryant on the historic inventory in a letter to the HRB, and I received assurance that the HRB did not intend to apply this designation if the homeowner objected. However, since this policy is not yet formalized, I want to reiterate my concern. I understand the need for city and state government to ensure that structures are safe, but imposing regulation on my aesthetic preference seems to me to be egregiously trampling on my private property rights and unfairly costing me substantial loss of property value. I enjoy looking at stately older homes, but I recognize that I don't own these homes, and I respect the owner's rights to modify them as they wish. I suspect that this historic inventory issue has emerged as a means of limiting the application of SB 9. It's not fair to selectively target the owners of older homes with extra regulation and financial penalty in reaction to this California bill. In my view, Palo Alto city government is already a bit too heavy-handed in the difficult balance of weighing the rights of the community against the rights of the individual. For example, although we all like to see trees in our neighborhood, if I worry that a large tree on my property regularly requires costly maintenance or will topple onto my house due to our changing climate, I need a special dispensation to be allowed to remove it. In the extensive remodeling that we implemented on our house in '89, we suffered significant delays and frustration in complying with then current building regulations. The contractors uniformly complained that Palo Alto regulations are notoriously more onerous than those of surrounding communities. Adding regulations that impose the city council's taste in architecture on me would be a step in the wrong direction. I'm a registered Democrat, but I agree with those on the other side of the aisle who oppose this type of government overreach. I have to agree with Hank Williams when he's saying, if you mind your own business, then you won't be minding mine. I applaud the recommendation of the staff report to affirm that HRB would not recommend that council place properties on the local
That's
historic
3
inventory
minutes.
or the expressed objections of the property owners. Opt-in would be an even better solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment on this item?
There is one raised hand on Zoom.
Okay.
Naji Bekazi.
Yeah. Hi. So I live on 1570 University Avenue. So also my house has been designated as a potential historical to be added to the list. So the one thing is I want to say the same thing about other people, what other people said about the process. And the reason is because this whole committee that came, that looked at the houses and stuff like that, they didn't even consult with us. For instance, my house on the front is the same, but in the back, it has been remodeled. So it has changed a lot. And then inside, the whole house has been remodeled. So if you actually look at it, the only thing that is kind of like could be considered historical is just the front of the house. The back of the house, the previous owner has changed all of it, and then the inside of it has all been gutted. New kitchens, new flooring, new everything. So there's not much that is historical inside or around the whole house except the front. So I think it would have been much better if like the company that you guys have hired to go and look at the properties and stuff like that, to have contacted us and say, hey, can we walk into the house? Can we look around the house? I think they just like walked through, drove through it and said, oh, okay, this looks like a historical, let's put it on. But if they actually bothered to look around the house, in the back and on the side, inside the house, they would have maybe decided that no, it's not historical because it has been modified over the years. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Is that everyone?
Yes, that's all
Okay.
public comments.
All right, let's continue on.
May I have an opportunity to help those who have spoken to understand the confirmation of their objections?
Yes, please.
Okay, yes. I'll just start with, well, first of all, just a comment on gutting a home on the inside does not render it no longer eligible for a register when it's been identified as, and many times additions on the back or even the side that aren't visible from the street are not an issue, even looking completely different than the home. That's one of the Secretary of Interior standards. then more could be said on that. I'm just going to go back through 162 Bryant. Jerry, thank you. We did note your objection, and that was a November 9th date for that property, and so that was not nominated on that date. Let's see, other objections. I just want to make sure that's confirmed. Simon, thank you. That report was public for this meeting was published the week of December 18th to the week, to try to give plenty of notice. And there was some action that happened around that time to verify what Simon said today about the owner and such. So that again is on our list today as not as an objection property. And I'll follow up with you, Simon. Let's see. Geeta, we received her objection November 6th, and it was on the November 9th meeting as an objection property. So I'm not sure why she would have gotten a card for December 14th. We'll take a look at that, but we already resolved hearing about her property on November 9th as an objection property. And I'll just note again that the November 9th properties, we did not send certified letters. We sent notice cards, and we changed the behavior of staff to issue notice cards and certified letters to all of the properties on the subsequent hearings. 1965 Cowper, that is on today's as an objection property. 509 Coleridge is on today as an objection property. 211 Middlefield as an objection property. I think that covers just to be clear, we've heard and we've noted these objections.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we will move to the items here. So the first batch is 10 properties under criterion 1, which is structure is identified with the lives of historic people or with important events in the city, state, or nation. You'll see here there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 asterisks. So those we will not proceed to have a motion, but 537 Coleridge, 2005 Cowper, 1215 Emerson, 1511 Madrono. Those are, we have not received objections. So at the pleasure of the chair.
Okay. Is there discussion on this? Okay. Then I'd like to make a motion to advance 537 Coleridge, 2005 Cowper, 1215 Emerson, and 1511 Madrono Avenue to consideration by council for placement on the local inventory.
I'm sorry, I do have a comment.
Okay.
The criteria for historic persons, I think, is arbitrary. What were the reasons? I mean, just because someone.
I believe it follows the National Register or the state criteria for historic persons. Is that correct?
Yes, I don't know if our consultant is online, that she can provide a competent answer for you on that. But on these properties, at least as far as I understand, these were identified back in the 1997 to 2000 survey. But our consultant did look at those. Barrett, are you online?
Yeah, I am here. I can speak to this. My name's Barrett Ryder. I'm with Page and Turnbull, and we did the survey and then assembled the materials. So under the National Register as well as the California Register, there's a criteria for an association with persons. If a property has a significant association with the productive life of a person, it would be eligible for either the National or California Register. And so these properties were previously found eligible for the National Register for that criteria. So we investigated that information, and in many of these cases, just because there was not a lot of background supplied on the original 2000 DPR forms, we did a little bit of extra research just to verify that in all of these cases, there was a significant association. This wasn't just a house that someone lived in for a year and maybe they were important locally, but then they moved on to the next residence. So we did try to provide a little extra information in these nomination forms to really kind of amplify that history and discuss the background. And in some cases, as Simon was discussing, we actually did find a couple properties that did not have a significant association and removed that association with a person. So in all of these cases, we did find that someone had lived there for a while, what they are known for or what they were employed in or discovered, those are all significantly associated to these properties, and we found them significant under criteria 1.
Thanks, Barrett. I went to bed last night thinking about these 10 properties associated with events or people, and I woke up this morning thinking about them. And yes, the national and state register is seemingly arbitrary. This is a issue that preservationists are currently having conversations about. For instance, 545 Chaucer Street, Dallas E. Wood. He was a journalist in Palo Alto. I'm sure he was a lovely person. Do we need him on this register because he worked in Palo Alto and lived in this house? The state says, sure, that's great. We can count that. We may think otherwise. At the same time, let's see, let's go with 1001 Fulton, which unfortunately there is an objection to. The Jew family. They were one of the first Chinese families in Palo Alto to own a home. That is significant, and that is speaking to the multicultural history of Palo Alto, which we've heard today there's an appetite to preserve. So, yes, unfortunately, due to the state, we need to take the journalists and civic leaders who may not be what the appetite to preserve their heritage is today, but along with that, we have the opportunity to preserve the multicultural Chinese and Black history of Palo Alto. So yes, we're taking the good with the bad, but I am in favor of nominating all of these as they're in line with the state and the federal regulations for the opportunity to represent that multicultural heritage in Palo Alto as a step to forward that agenda.
Are there any additional comments on this one?
I'd just like to say that it's hard to look back 100 years and realize that we built on their shoulders. And a lot of us didn't grow up in California. A lot of us didn't grow up in the US. But Palo Alto is a very unique place. And the people who were writing newspaper articles and forming public opinion and on our city council and serving as mayor and running our laundries and starting lumberyards, those are the people that set us up for where we are now. And I know most of you are wary of the process, but I also know that most of you love your houses. And you would be pretty sad if the next guy who moved in came in with the bulldozer and took it all out. So I think in some ways we need to look ahead. We need to look back and we need to look ahead. And hopefully we can find a lovely compromise.
All right, anyone else? We do have the motion on the table right now.
Oh, I'll second it.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. I would like to see us not vote on this right now. I think we need more education to the public about what the benefits are. We have a February meeting in which we could start that education process. A couple of fellow members and I looked at what are the financial benefits of having your home listed. And we could not find anything that would benefit you while you are living there and not doing any changes. The benefits come in when you start to remodel your home or you apply for your applications for renovation. So as you're living there, we didn't see any benefits. And we would like to explore that more and educate everybody about it before I vote on it. I would like to see us do a little bit more, dig deeper into the details.
So I do think this is an important discussion, but we also haven't agendized a discussion of incentives for today. And that is something I know we intend to take up at a future meeting, but right now there's not, I don't think the meeting's set up to cover that specifically.
Well, I also will note that item 3 today is an opportunity for a general discussion, as well as a commentary on the correspondence from the subcommittee that has been published on our webpage that has implications being wider than the subcommittee communication. So, I mean, I didn't hear a motion to move forward. Was that Vice Chair Roman, was that the motion to move forward with the ones that?
No, I believe.
Oh, that was you. Okay,
Caroline
sorry.
seconded it.
I
Yeah.
did, and Caroline seconded.
Alyssa, okay, so
Yeah.
so Member Heinrich, I think you're proposing a substitute motion or something, because right now we have a motion on the table and a second. And then, is that what you're doing? Is that a substitute motion that you would like to not vote today? I only am concerned because we have, our consultants are here for, 4 meetings, and we're going to be finished with the consultants, and then we're going to be moving the ones that want to go probably more quickly than those who are objecting as far as what the council, because some folks that are on these lists are very interested in being on the list and have projects waiting in the wings for this process to complete. And so I just want to be clear, to hold those people back may not be fair. So some of them are among the list of properties today, and some have come forward to the HRB already.
And additionally, I just want to point out that the HRB does not place anything on the inventory. We don't. That's not what we do.
Right.
We simply recommend to council. And so for properties that have been advanced to council at this point, there is an opportunity for further communication. There's an opportunity for further objections. The dialogue is not over at the end of today's meeting. There's plenty of opportunity for those who would want or need that. But I think it is important for council who has already received our advancement of the majority of the properties that are part of this discussion, for them to see the complete set of properties that are in non-objector status right now, which is why I would prefer to continue with this process, because the process for the property owners who are in non-objector status is not over. They still have an opportunity at council. We don't list anything all by ourselves.
And I'll just add to that, the HRB reviewed properties on the 9th and on the 14th. Since those meetings, we've received objections, and we're tracking all of that. So that would also be, forwarded, and all of those people are invited to come and talk and give input when we do have that evening community meeting on potential additional incentives or moving forward on our Mills Act and this kind of thing. So just to throw that out there.
Can we proceed with the vote?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Chair Eagleson Cheslowich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
No.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Wimmer.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
All right. Can continue to the next group.
Thank you. This next group of 5 are found eligible for the local inventory under criterion 1 and 2 as noted. There have been 4 objections to date. 939 Forest, I believe, the member of the audience, Thoit's family spoke today.
No, they're not. There's one non-objector, and they didn't object today. Yeah. So, is there discussion on this item?
Wait, did 939 Forest, did they object or not object to being on the list?
She spoke today to the board and did not object. She said she is in it still,
Okay.
but would like to have further clarification, I think, of the incentives. And so that's what our intent is to do in certainly February and beyond.
Right. Would anyone like to make a motion on this one?
So Amy, we only have 2 objections in this group.
Shown on the screen, there are 4 objections indicated by the 4 asterisks. So the only property in this group that is up for nomination today is 939 Forest.
So I'll move that we recommend to council that they place 939 Forest as a category 2 on our inventory.
I'll second the motion.
Board Member Wimmer,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Chair Eagleson Cheslowich.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
The next group of 3 includes 2 we have not received objections to and 1 that we have. 270 Kellogg is the objection, and the other 2 are 1407 Hamilton and 1401 Edgewood under criteria 1, 2, and 5 as noted.
Any discussion on these? Okay, I would like to move that we advance 1407 Hamilton and 1401 Edgewood to consideration by council for placement on the historic inventory.
Second the motion.
And I think it would be good to clarify that we recommend for 1407 Hamilton as a category 1 and 1401 Edgewood as a category 2. Friendly amendment, whatever.
Yes. Can I second that? Okay, great.
Chair Eagleson Cheslowich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
No.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Wimmer.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
The next batch is 3 private properties, 2 of which have, including Simon Firth's property at 2131 Harvard, objections received. And so what remains is 50 Crescent under criterion 2 on the local inventory as a category 3 property.
On this item, I need to recuse myself because these are current clients of mine. And they just purchased this property. They don't live in Palo Alto. I don't know that they're fully aware of what's the historic efforts that are going on. I tried to contact them to alert them of it. They did not respond to that specific request to discuss it with them, but I just need to recuse myself for this one.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion items for this one? Okay. Is there a motion?
I'd like to recommend to council that they place 50 Crescent on our current inventories category 3 regarding criterion 2.
I second.
Board Member Willis, Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
No.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Chair Eagleson Cheslowich,
Yes.
motion carries 5-1.
The next batch of 2 includes one property that has not sent in an objection. That's 418 Coleridge Street under local criteria 2, 5, and 6 as noted. And this property is nominated as a category 1 resource on the local inventory.
Any discussion on this? Okay, I would like to move that 418 Coleridge be advanced to council as a category 1 for consideration for placement on the local historic inventory.
I'll second that motion.
Chair Eagleson Cheslowich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
No.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member Willis, Board Member Wimmer,
Yes.
motion carries 6-1.
Oops. The next batch of 2, we have one objection at 1570 University. The remaining address is 1474 Edgewood Drive under local criteria 2 and 5 as noted, and a recommended placement of category 2 on the inventory.
Is there discussion on this? Okay. I would like to move that we recommend 1474 Edgewood Drive as a category 2 resource for consideration by council for inclusion on the local inventory.
I second the motion.
Board Member Wimmer,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
No.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Chair Eagleson Cheslowich,
Yes.
motion carries 6-1.
Now we're doing one-off, single properties in the next set. 904 Cowper Street has been found eligible for the local inventory under local criteria 1, 2, and 3 as noted, and as a category 2 resource.
Any discussion on 904 Cowper Street? Okay, I'd like to move that 904 Cowper Street is advanced to council as a category 2 resource for consideration for inclusion on the local inventory.
I second.
Chair Eagleson Cheslowich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
No.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Wimmer,
Yes.
motion carries 6-1.
The next address is 330 Cowper Street. We heard from the speaker today who owns that property, this relationship to the Black or African-American history of Palo Alto. This was a property that was postponed from December 14th by owner request. And I can see that she did her additional research, which is great, to find out more. This is under criterion 1 as a category 2 resource on the local inventory.
Is there discussion on 330 Cowper?
I would like to say that I am delighted that the owner took the opportunity to do the additional research and to follow up. To your comments, I agree that there is more that can be done to recognize both our African-American and other multicultural histories in Palo Alto. That is something I'm acknowledging that the city could be better about. That said, I do believe this is an amazing first step in adding it to the inventory and beginning to even out the landscape of properties that compose our local inventory and the previous owners of significance. So I commend you and I thank you and all of the other speakers today, regardless of their opinion, for their comments.
Yeah, I also want to say thank you. Inclusion of history and history of groups that have historically been underrepresented in the narrative matters. And this is a step in that direction. So thank you. Adding this property matters. Any other comments?
Was there a second? Sorry, I didn't
Oh,
hear.
I don't think we've had the motion yet.
Okay.
But I would like to move to advance 330 Capper Street as a category 2 to council for inclusion on the local historic inventory.
I'll second.
Board Member Wimmer,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Chair Eagleson Cheslovich.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
This item, 365 Hawthorne, was postponed from the December 14th by owner request. The owner has since registered an objection to the nomination and listing. And so this one we will skip today and we'll collectively have the opportunity on the 25th.
Okay.
The next one is 365 Gwynda, and this is a property eligible for the local register under criteria 1, 5, and 6 as noted as a category 2 resource.
Oops, sorry, my microphone. Okay. I'd like to move to advance 365 Gwynda Street as a category 2 resource for consideration by council for inclusion on the local inventory.
I second.
Chair Eagleson Cheslovich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
No.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member Willis, Board Member Wimmer.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
The next property is 375 Hawthorne, local criterion 1 and 3, and as a category 2 resource on the local inventory for recommendation to council.
Is there discussion on 375 Hawthorne? Nope. Okay. I'd like to move to advance 375 Hawthorne as a category 2 as a category 2 on the historic inventory to council for inclusion on the historic inventory.
Second.
Board Member Wimmer,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
No.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Chair Eagleson Cheslovich.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
I'm just going to note, sometimes I say register when I mean inventory, as refers to the local inventory. Many cities call them a register, so we're unique in that way. Okay, the next batch is 3 properties with criterion 2 and 5 on the local inventory and under as a category 2 resource. So we have not received objections for these properties to date.
Is there discussion on these addresses. Would anyone else like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to advance to council for consideration of adding to the local inventory 518 through 526 Bryant, 2340 Tasso Street, and 546 Washington Avenue.
I will second.
I'll second.
Chair Eagles and Cheslowich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
No.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Wimmer.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
This slide is showing the remaining item for this set as 525 University Avenue. This was found eligible for the California Register and is the very tall building on University Avenue. I think it's 13 or 14 stories tall. That is eligible under local criteria 1, 2, and 5 as a Category 1 building, and Category 1 resource on the local inventory for recommendation to council. Thank you.
Any further discussion on 525 University? Yes.
I would just like to note that this is a commercial building, correct? Yeah, and they have different incentives and everything else than a residence.
Correct. This is in the commercial downtown community zone.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to advance 525 University Avenue to council as a Category 1 for consideration for inclusion on the local inventory.
I'll second.
Board Member Wimmer,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Chair Eagles and Cheslowich.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
This set has two properties, 2040 Yale Street and 885 College Street, both in the College Terrace neighborhood under criterion 2. And this is architectural style or way of life. As the first one, Yale Street is a Category 2 resource recommendation on the local inventory, and 885 College is a Category 3 resource recommendation for the local inventory.
Are there any further comments on this group of properties? No. Okay. I'd like to move that we advance 2140 Yale Street as a Category 2 and 885 College Avenue as a Category 3 to council for consideration for listing on the local inventory.
I second.
Chair Eagles and Cheslowich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
No.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Wimmer.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
As noted on the screen, 1145 Lincoln has a red asterisk, meaning we received an objection from that property owner. And so we'll move on to the next group. The next is 321 California Avenue. This was local criteria 2 and 3 for architecture and type of building, once common, now rare. And as a Category 2 resource on the local inventory, that is the recommendation of the consultant.
Is there further discussion on this?
I think Gogo might just want to be reminded that this is also a commercial building. It was originally a Safeway. Well, not originally, but
So I'd like to make a motion to advance 321 California Avenue as a Category 2 resource to council for consideration for placement on the historic inventory.
I'll second.
Chair Eagleson Chesowich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon,
yes,
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Wimmer,
Yes.
motion carries 7-0.
We have 550 Santa Rita Avenue under local criteria 2 and 5 as noted, eligible for Category 2 resource on the local inventory.
Is there additional comment on 550 Santa Rita Avenue?
A little arbitrary, but I love that record of everything that had been done to the house under the owners over the decades. I want to do it for mine. It was really interesting to see the little and the big.
Anyone else? Okay, I'd like to move that we advance 550 Santa Rita Avenue as a Category 2 to council for consideration for listing on the local inventory.
I second.
Board Member Wimmer,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon,
yes,
Board Member Heinrich,
No.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Chair Eagleson Chesowich,
Yes.
motion carries 6-1.
On the slide, 1082 College Avenue, recommended to the local inventory as a Category 3 under Criterion 3 for example of a type of building once common, now rare.
Are there any additional comments on 1082 College Avenue?
Well, I just like to point out that maybe this is one of those places that's kind of normal and mundane, but there's not many left. And it used to be, there used to be quite a lot of it. So for me, this is something that's kind of important to hold on to if we can. I know that even if these buildings are on our historic inventory, they're not protected for eternity. But I think the stories have a much better chance of living if we do put them on the inventory. So I strongly support this.
Anyone else? Would you like a motion?
I can do that. I'm having a little microphone trouble here. But so I recommend that we recommend to council that 1082 College is put on our inventory as a Category 3.
I second.
Chair Eagleson Chesowich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
No.
Board Member McKinnon,
yes,
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Wimmer,
Yes.
motion carries 6-1.
On the screen, 759 Homer Avenue under local criterion 2 for architectural style or way of life, important to the city, state, or nation. And this is recommended as a Category 3 resource on the local inventory.
Is there discussion on 759 Homer? No, okay. I'd like to move that we advance 759 Homer as a Category 3 resource to council for consideration for placement on the historic inventory.
I'll second.
Board Member Wimmer,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon,
yes,
Board Member Heinrich,
No.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Chair Eagleson Chesowich,
Yes,
motion carries 6-1.
thank you. And I believe that
That concludes the item 2, recommendations.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, so we're moving on to item 3. All right, would you like to start with a staff report on item 3, or would you like to start with public comment?
Well, let's see. Do we have public comment for item 3? So just a quick summary why we're doing this. We attempted to have a discussion. Well, we did have a discussion on December 14th. We did not have the full board here. And so it was difficult for many reasons to anticipate what the board might feel like doing. It's always difficult to look into a crystal ball towards the hearing where we will discuss the objection properties. Staff intends to collect the reasons and try to represent all of the different reasons for the HRB to digest at that hearing. But today, the goal is to have the HRB express its intention, at least for January 25th, with regard to the objections properties. And so staff recommends that the HRB does not move those forward to the council if there are objections, just as the state does. But also at that meeting, staff recommends the HRB can affirm the continuing eligibility of the properties for the local inventory. And that would be so at a future time, the property owner could come forward and note that the HRB had already recommended the eligibility for the local register, even if it did not recommend placement to the council. So due to the objections. Thank you.
Let's move to public comment at this point.
First is Marion Odell.
Odell, my husband and I own a home in the corner of Cowper and Everett, 482 Everett. We were in the first group. I was here in November and wrote a letter that we did not want to be on the historic registry. We still feel the same way. We remodeled the house in 2006. We bought it in 1987. And our reasons are the same: possible impact on saleability, added restrictions to permits for changes, hinder new building. Our lot is not big, so SB 8 would not qualify, but I do believe that we do need more housing on large lots, even though ours isn't that. So I do want to still object to being on the historic registry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Darlene Yapley.
Is there a separate comment on the mistaken email, or are we doing that right now, Amy?
Oh, I believe it's relevant to the HRB's consideration for this.
The protocols. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure I was following process. Okay, it is a surprise to read a recommendation for our HRB to approve the Page and Turnbull list for the inventory from 3 members and a likely 4th member, which is a majority of the HRB. Separate than a potential serial meeting under the Brown Act, I share the following points of concerns about the content in the mistaken email. We categorically reject the proposal for an HRB approved list for the Palo Alto inventory if the council is not going to take action soon. Such a list places residents on an ambiguous list, further underscoring concerns of uncertainty and another round of anguish regarding our properties, especially without an updated ordinance clearly stating that objections are honored or that an opt-in from owners is required. We are already on the deemed eligible list. Then you have a potentially eligible list and the Palo Alto inventory list, not to mention the California list or the national list. There is a statutory list of benefits communicated by staff and on the website. Yet, when residents say there are no benefits, it's because we have investigated and many of us have had meetings with Amy. The statutory list and the benefits are not valued or usable for the homeowner or property. The February meeting to get ideas for benefits hopefully will identify What could be beneficial for homeowners from their perspective? Design consultation is listed as a benefit, but instead, many of us see this as a negative, as additional red tape. Furthermore, costs to homeowners are not listed, such as building restrictions of historical designation are extremely detrimental to the homeowners and property values, and consultants at the homeowner's expense for a myriad of work related to historical homes, which are not needed for non-historical homes. Objecting property owners have been remanded to a 125 meeting. Many objectors have not given their comments to the HRB, and in other cases, people have given general comments, but are reserving their property-specific comments for the 125 meeting. So making a recommendation now to approve a list of homes prior to the 125 meeting is premature, and unfortunately casts doubt on the integrity of the process. For example, a board member mentioned at a community meeting, we would be remiss not to listen to residents. Lastly, references are made to the Office of Historical Preservation and their bulletins. Palo Alto was certified prior to the established best practices from the OHP. My hunch is that Palo Alto is not following best practices. For example, performing a survey of ordinances in place which clearly
That's 3
defines
minutes.
the
Please wrap
process and
up.
ordinance. My hunch is we're not following the ordinance best practices.
Next is Catherine Clark.
Good morning. I'm the owner of the property at 555 Center Drive, Palo Alto, and we've been deferred for decision or recommendation on January 25. But my understanding on this item 3 in the agenda is that you're going to be discussing a protocol, which I would fully support the proposition that if anyone has objected to being listed, that the HRB remove them from the list for now. I really think this is cart before the horse. We don't know what the benefits are. Even the Mills Act won't help. My husband and I, we bought this property in 1984. We've renovated it. We aren't going to seek any more building permits. We just put on a new roof a few years ago. This place, as long as we live there, we plan to live there for the rest of our lives, will not be touched and will preserve the historic value of the property. But I don't want to be listed without knowing the benefits. And for now, I don't see any benefits to our listing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Martin.
Thank you, Chair and Board. Martin Bernstein. A few comments. First of all, any regulations and ordinances that any jurisdiction passes, certainly they will reflect the cultural values of the community. So we'll see how strong of a cultural value historic preservation is for the city of Palo Alto, and then the consequential ordinances that get adopted and passed by the council. A few speakers earlier today spoke about the need for education, including the education of what are some of the benefits of historical preservation. As some speakers already mentioned, in the ordinances, there are advantages and economic incentives that are in the ordinances, but I think the general public would not know about those. So I think the importance of educating the public on what are the economic values and the cultural values of historic preservation. That's essential, and I think you've heard that from a few people already. The one example of financial value is some of the properties can expand the FAR and the floor area ratio, and then in terms of dollars, for example, historic properties are being sold for what, $2,600 a square foot. It costs maybe $500 a square foot, $600 a square foot to add additional square footage. That can net about $2,000 a square foot immediate additional value for the additional 250 square feet the moment that paint dries. Any questions? So Education, I think, is going to be the big key. And then, so the HRB, what's the HRB doing to promote that education, those benefits? And also to the city council, what is the city council doing to expand the benefits explanations? Those are, I think, the main keys. The papers people have seen objections mount, and one talks about the decrease in value. Well, I just mentioned how it's the increase can be value, and historic properties are being sold for $2,600 a square foot. So that's millions of dollars. So I don't see how that's being hurt financially. So education, I think, is the main key, and that you've heard that often today, and I think that's probably the key for educating homeowners and property owners about this. So again, ordinances reflect a cultural value. If people understand more about the cultural value of historic preservation, if that happens, then the ordinances, I think, can fall pretty easily that way. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have two online on Zoom. First is Leon B.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good morning, council members. My name is Lian B, and I lived at 380 Coleridge Avenue, Palo Alto. And I spoke at the December meetings, and I sent objection letter to the council member, and I just want to reiterate here. So first, I don't think there's any financial benefit to the property. Instead, it's a burden to the family owners. And secondly, the house has been remodeled and renovated a couple years ago, and by the previous owners. So it's no longer like historical. And the next comment I would like to make is the criteria. The standard is unclear, and the whole process is quite cloudy, as the other owners mentioned before. So like I said, I spoke at the previous meeting, and I sent objection emails, and now I still feel the same way. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Next is Brian Maslish.
Hi there. Thank you for the chance to speak to the board, and thank you, Amy, for agendizing this. This is Brian Maslish, owner of 951 Hamilton. I previously filed an objection, and appreciate that the board is considering this motion today. Many objectors are looking for clarity and comfort in terms of process moving forward. And as you consider the protocol for the 25th meeting, I'd encourage you to provide clarity such that owners are not required to participate in that meeting or pursue any further obligations in terms of the cost into both time, effort, and expense in some cases. So thank you for your time and for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
That's all our public
Any additional
speakers.
comments? Okay. All right, we're going to close public comment. Is there any additional information from staff?
Just confirming that those that spoke about their prior objections have been noted, and action was not taken on those, just to be clear. 380 Coleridge, 951 Hamilton, 555 Center, 482 Everett. Just to confirm for assurances. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to open this up to board discussion. I'd sort of like to kick things off with, I think there are actually kind of two questions here. One is to comment on the consultant's work, and that, you know, to comment on whether we think that all of the properties that have been nominated are nominated, you know, correctly under the correct categories and for the correct reasons. But then there's a separate question of what to do with properties that have objections registered and to, try to create some, comfort and certainty for folks who do not want their properties listed at this time. And so why don't we start there? And I know people have thoughts, so.
Well, I mean, I think this has been an amazing exercise. Hopeful, but somewhat disappointing, I think, for some of us. But, I think one of the most important things that we heard today that actually Karen Holman stated was the public cannot care more than the city does. Well, the city does really care. The city council really does care because the city council is the body that put us up to doing this task. But I think that the city council can probably help us learn from this experience and define better incentives and offer that assurance and care that the public is looking for. We look at places like Pasadena and Oak Grove and other places in California that they put preservation first. And a lot of people have this pride of ownership that they have a historic house. And maybe that is their incentive. Maybe there isn't a financial incentive that goes along with it. It's just the pride of ownership of a piece of Palo Alto history. Somehow we're losing that sort of concept, I think. We're all concerned about our property values, but I feel like the focus is so much on property value. I think I would like to see the community put that aside to some degree and focus on the preservation and the celebration of the history of Palo Alto and the beautiful environment that we are so lucky to live in. And a lot of these people are stewards of these houses. They will pass on these houses in the future to another generation of occupants and owners. And what a gift to give them something that has been lovingly preserved over all these years. So I do think that we need to work on our incentives. I think a lot of the public, they're saying that they're not certain how this impacts them. They're not fully understanding what this means to them. And I get that because I feel like the city needs to work on making it clear. Although we mention it many times, we talk about the incentives, we talk about the historic building code, and yet that's hard for someone to interpret until they actually go through a process of doing a remodel or trying to change their house, or until they go through the process of selling their house. They really don't know that their house has been devalued because you don't know. Because you haven't sold your house, but I can guarantee you that any house, historic or not, in the city of Palo Alto, you're not going to lose money. But that's beside the point. I think the point is what we as a board, and like Alyssa said, that we are not placing these properties on any register or on any inventory. We're just qualifying them as potentially historic. We are recognizing the value that they have. So I think that we should all celebrate that. But so we as a board, we are not trying to put that sort of place it on an inventory. We're not trying to prevent you from experiencing any value or any hardships. But I just hope that we as a city embrace this great moment we have to preserve these houses. And like I said, celebrate that.
I do not object to the list as a whole. I do object to the process where the owners have to opt out instead of opt in to that list.
I'd just like to add that, we talk about benefits, but for me, and my house is not on the inventory, but it's a 1909. And I was very happy that it was still standing when I moved into it. I think it was me or the wrecking ball. But I think most of you understand that you're really lucky to have the properties you have, that there is some craftsmanship and some spirit and some design that's there that's not in modern life. And there's something very reassuring about walking back into this enclosure that's been standing for a long time and speaks to the future being there, you know, in this day and age. So I think there's a benefit that's way beyond money that many of us do hope to pass on to the next generation or the next owners of our houses. And I know it's a leap of faith to think that the city's not going to do something onerous that would make it challenging for you or expensive for you. But I think we need to take that leap of faith and say that there's some value in preserving these buildings.
I am very pleased that we have a quorum today of the full board in attendance. I am happy to personally say that I will be voting in alignment with the California Register of Historic Resources and the state process that, as Ms. Yapley said, I have said in the past, we would be remiss to add a property to the inventory that would be listed over the owner's objections. That is not in line with the state does, with the caveat that the State Historic Resources Commission can still list the property if they feel the need to, or that it's valid. That said, yes, it may mean that people don't need to come and object in person on the 25th, or they can submit their comments ahead of time. I do think that as an owner of a home in Palo Alto, this is part of your responsibility, is to be a part of this process. And thank you for those who have been a part of it, whether it's in support of the process or in objection. But I just want to make it clear that as a homeowner, this is part of your responsibility. So thank you for being a part of it. I was going to say something else, but I'm going to stop there.
I just wanted to add one more thing, that this, we realize that we do need to work on the incentives. And I feel like one of the most profound things that we've learned about this process is that we need to step up these incentives. I totally agree. We've been, ever since I've been on the board, which has been probably about 10 years now, we've discussed incentives. We've discussed the Mills Act. We've tried to figure out how to get that to be a successful program in Palo Alto. We're still working on that. So incentives, yes, I think that's our biggest challenge. And if we had better incentives, more clear incentives that these homeowners could immediately realize, I think that would make a profoundly positive impact on our moving forward incentives, improving incentives.
The city of Palo Alto provides significant benefits to commercial property owners for historic preservation, and I think it's time that consider providing adequate incentives for owners of residential properties that are significant to our history.
I agree with what Christian just said. We need something for the residents or for residential properties, not just commercial.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really clear that further discussion of incentives is necessary. It's something that we've heard loud and clear that the community wants. I think it's something that there is, interest in, and it's something that we can take up and do intend to take up starting at that February community meeting. So please come with your suggestions. Come to talk about it. We want to hear from you, because that is, a time to start this conversation. So I really do invite and welcome and encourage participation at that time. Regarding the eligible list that we have seen and what was provided by the consultants, I do want to say I do agree with the work of the consultants. This list and the categories provided, these properties do appear to be eligible. and categorized correctly. And I would like to recognize that formally. And I also would like to combine this with, kind of the notice that these properties were found to be eligible for the National or the State Historic Register. And that's not us. We are not that body. So if people have concerns about that isn't us, right? It also means that we do not have the ability to exempt anyone from CEQA. Properties on this list are already impacted by CEQA, depending upon the particulars of the development proposal. So that's not something that this is necessarily going to change. So this is listing on a local inventory. And I think that the work that was done for listing on the local inventory is, fundamentally correct. And I would like to acknowledge that. And I think also by acknowledging that, I've heard a lot of property owners talk about future owners of their property and not tying their hands. Acknowledging this work also gives those future owners the opportunity to opt into the historic inventory without re-reviewing the property and incurring those costs. Because having your property reviewed it's expensive. There are costs associated with that. And this does allow those folks, should they want to go through that process at, without incurring those costs. So there is somewhat of a benefit there. But also this all said about the correctness, at least my perception of the correctness of this inventory, recommendation list, is that I'm also in favor of aligning our procedures with that of the state. And not recommending properties for inclusion over the expressed objections of the homeowners. So while the list is, I think, very valid and correct, it doesn't mean we have to advance every single property on that list.
What is the cost for an individual review of your property for historic preservation?
I don't have that at the ready to state at this moment. I can certainly put that in the staff report for the January 25th, and we'll do that. The idea is that if an owner comes forward individually, not in a group batched process such as we're in, they would incur the cost. There's a cost to bring properties forward to the HRB and then the council on those individual properties, and that would be borne by the property owner for the fees, for the consultant fees and the staff work. Whereas this process, the council approved a budget for.
I found it really interesting to go back through the reports of projects that are in the work because those reports were much more detailed than the ones that the city funded. When individuals did it, the consultants tended to do a very deep job, and some of those reports were really fabulous with the information they contained. So I'm sure they cost a lot of money, but I think that there was a lot of value given there too. It was really interesting.
Is there further discussion on this, or are we kind of at the point where we feel ready for a motion to signal some direction here? Because I'm happy to make a motion, but I want to make sure everybody has had Board Member McKeenan. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
Thank you very much. I've been a longtime member of the HRB for quite a few years. I think my term is coming to an end here, not too distant future, but one of the things my perception is that there is a level of distrust amongst the public and the homeowners of historic properties with the city, dealing with the city. And I think one of the causes for this is that we used to have what was known as a historic planner that could interface very effectively with homeowners to address their concerns and questions. And that position has gone vacant for a long time. And I think that leads to a lot of uncertainty and questions that the public and people who own historic houses have this lack of a point of contact to get clarity on some of these issues. That would go, I believe that would go a long way if we had a person that could interface effectively with the homeowner. So I think there's a level of distrust that the public does see on dealing with regulations. It's the reputation for the city is not great as far as dealing with city officials on projects that may affect their homes. And I would like to see the city planner position to be restored. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, good point. Yes. All right. Anything else? So I would like to make a kind of a two-part motion. The first part is that we recognize and agree with the consultant's work and that the categories presented for each property are appropriate, and that the properties covered in this inventory recommendation are eligible for listing on the local register or inventory, called inventory. The second part is that the HRB does not intend to advance properties with registered objections to consideration by council at this time.
Can we separate out those two items? Because I agree with the first, not with the second.
I think we can we take them individually? Is there any, okay, well, let's take the first one. Let's take the first part. Yeah.
Okay, I second the motion, the first motion.
Yeah, so we agree with the consultant's work and that the categories are appropriate and that these properties are eligible for listing on the local inventory. Got a second?
Chair Eagleson Cheslowich,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Wimmer,
Yes.
motion carries 7-0.
And now for part two, it's that the HRB does not intend to advance properties with registered objections to consideration by council at this time.
I second the motion.
Can we have a discussion?
Yes.
How does a belief that the owner should opt in follow that motion?
Would you like to respond about the procedure of that?
Well, so yeah, just to clarify, and I think I clarified this at the December meeting, our intention, staff's intention and planned protocol is that we would send certified letters to all of the the owners of properties that for which we have not received objections. That is planned, after this meeting, to collect all of those and send out a clear letter that says, we have not heard from you. Those that we have not heard from, because we definitely do not want to move forward with anything if somebody has not received the mail. I have for instance, somebody that I'm meeting with today who has, I think, 5 properties they've said that are of concern, and they're a trustee. So there are situations out there where it's not just, being received by the owner, and that they can turn around quickly. So those properties, we have a plan for those. As far as the opt-in, I mean, we've not received objections from these property owners that have been recommended. We definitely, before we get to council, want to hear from all of those properties that we have not heard, the owners we have not heard from. So in that sense, that's an opt-in, because we're making sure we talk to every property owner before we ever go to council.
Can you just repeat your motion, just so it's
Yeah.
fresh in my mind?
That we don't intend to advance properties with objections to council at this time.
Okay.
Do I need to re-second the motion?
Board Member Wimmer,
Yes.
Board Member Willis,
Yes.
Board Member Pease,
Yes.
Board Member McKinnon,
Yes.
Board Member Heinrich,
No,
Vice Chair Roman,
Yes.
Chair Eagleson Cheselvish.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
So for everybody who's been concerned about their property and the status of their objections, you've heard our intentions. We just voted on them. We do not intend to advance those properties at this time.
And I'll jump in to say there will be a published staff report for the January 25th meeting that will clarify this vote that happened. And that will say it is not necessary to attend that meeting because a number of property owners have said they don't want to be involved at all. So that's an option to not attend, but we do encourage people to attend if they want to vocalize in person to the HRB and have that full experience of presenting the reasons why. So that will be here in 2 weeks in this chambers. And again, encourage folks to attend the community meeting on the 23rd of February.
I would also like to implore the public, if you do have specific examples of where two similar properties, and one was on the inventory and one wasn't, and there were distinct, they were similar conditions, similar properties, but very different pricing in the same, period. I know it's hard to find, that things happen over the years, but I'm sure there must be one or two if that's really the case. So if you could bring us those, that would be very helpful because it's hard to look at it in the abstract. And obviously, historic houses or houses built with older materials and older craftsmanship are not very, they're just not comparable to modern houses. So we could use all the input you can give us on specifics would be wonderful. Thanks.
Can we just talk for a moment about, okay, so we've gone through this process and we've identified the properties that we feel have a historic merit and could potentially be on some kind of a list in the future, but what's our next step now? I mean, we're going to have another public outreach. When we go to the council and we say we're not recommending that you adopt these, shouldn't we say because, shouldn't we give them a follow-up to that saying we're recommending at this time because we want to accomplish these goals, and then we feel like after, and maybe those goals are public education incentives, and after we accomplish that secondary goal, then we would recommend them? I'm just trying to connect the dots in my own mind, sorry.
So I think right now council is going to have the opportunity to vote on the non-objector properties. And so I think that for those properties, that is the next step. And there are property owners on that list who would like this to happen sooner rather than later because, renovations or whatever. And so that's really the next step for those properties. We are signaling that we do not intend to vote or to advance any of the objector properties now. And I think that the hope would be that through development of incentives, and it's not a quick process, right? Like developing incentives and creating the community relationship that might make this more attractive to some of the objectors, that's going to, I think, be a process. And I think, but hopefully I would love to see us get to a point where those incentives are impactful enough for property owners that they would actually want to come back to us and say, hey, I was a no a few years ago, but this is interesting to me and you've gotten me to yes. that's what I would hope.
I completely agree. And it helps preserve the investment in this whole process, which has been significant.
I would like to see the council approve the list, but have the owners opt in.
Well, that was one of the things that we were trying to accomplish with our subcommittee. And we had hoped that we could possibly amend the current ordinance to include the wording that is on the state and national register about no property should be on any historic list or register. And I'm trying to remember, and I apologize, the exact wording of it, but it's
Over the objections.
over the objection.
Which is different than opting in.
Yeah, opt-in is an affirmative. I want to be on the register.
Right.
But what we're doing is a non-objection.
Which is in line with the state and national registers. So Palo Alto, the way our process has been conducted is in line with the state. I know the state for sure.
And we use that same wording. I don't believe that wording is included in the Palo Alto.
No, but the motion we just voted on is affirming us as a board being in line with the wording of the state, even though it is not in our ordinance.
Yeah, our ordinance is silent on that. In theory, our ordinance would allow a property to be placed on the inventory over the objections of a homeowner, like somebody who's actively objecting. In theory, the home could be put on the inventory, but what we're saying is that we do not intend to do that.
Right, but it would be nice if it was solidified in the ordinance, because I do think that it would be nice. I mean, California already does it, the National Register already does it. That's a pretty high level precedent. So I think it would be nice if we could follow suit on that.
I agree.
In the future.
Yeah, in the future.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
also,
it
seems to me, I don't know, ordinances are mystery to me in this town, but whether it be easier to just add that one sentence to the existing ordinance as an amendment, rather than revisiting this whole thing.
Ms. French, would you like to comment on ordinance revisions?
Yes, happy to do that. The great thing about our ordinance is it's contained in chapter 16 or title 16. It's chapter 1649. The changes to chapter 16 do not require going to the Planning and Transportation Commission first. Their purview is title 18. So that's one step that we would not have to go through to get something like that to council. We might consider a two-part process going to council with those properties that we have not received objections after full multiple certified letters or such things. Some have not received certified letters. That was the first batch for November 9th. So that we want to make sure that those go out quickly and catch those properties, as well as cards to everyone that has objected and is placed on the January 25th meeting, the objections properties. But yes, I think on the 25th, perhaps there could be an agenda item that states this surgical sentence placement on the inventory, on the ordinance chapter 1649. I'm happy to, I don't think have we sent out the ad already for that? We might have already sent out the ad for that meeting on the 25th, but yeah, that could happen in the next in a meeting of the HRB before we ever go to council. That's a possibility.
I think also one other item besides this effort of the inventory that we were tasked to do was to revisit the ordinance and to understand or observe its effectiveness. So maybe we can agendize that, maybe not at the next meeting, but at, maybe the meeting after that, so we can get it noticed about studying, okay, now that we've gone through this exercise, let's revisit the ordinance and read it and see if it is effective, or areas that it's not effective. And during that discussion, we can also decide to include this wording that is shared with the state and the national about owner's objection. I don't think that we have focused just on the ordinance and the effectiveness of the ordinance. And I kind of feel like after this whole exercise that we've done, that with that information in our head, now we can look at the ordinance and see, measure if it's working or not, including that homeowner agreement, disagreement clause.
I agree. As we look to set the goals of the HRB for the 2024 period, once we have gotten through this process, contingent upon the budget that City Council has approved for this time boxed period, maybe that is our focus in 2024. And we make that goal number 1 is evaluating the ordinance, and goal number 2 is outreach. This is all spitballing ideas for 2024. But I think we've laid out our goals for 2023. And if we can agendize adding the proposed sentence to the ordinance for next meeting, I would support that addition.
Yeah, we can agendize that if it's possible under the, yeah.
It's possible, I suppose, as a study session to have that discussion, and then there could be a follow-up, and perhaps the follow-up could be included in that community meeting at the end of February 23rd, if there was an interest in discussing the ordinance as well as the incentives. I don't know if that's too much to take on for a 2-3 hour meeting, but yeah.
I have an inkling that with the public meeting, we won't have enough time just to listen to what the public has to say. I don't know. I think we're going to have more participants from the public, and they'll probably want to reiterate some of the themes that they've been already telling us. So I don't think that we have much. I don't think we should add to that meeting. I think but in our follow-up meeting as a regular board meeting, I think we should continue just to discuss incentives and discuss the ordinance and the effectiveness of the ordinance.
Possibly we'll want to give ourselves a little bit more time on the heels of that meeting on the 25th. So it may be that we look towards March, early March, for kind of, we may put on the March agenda the CLG report that we have to do every year, as well as this goal that's been a goal that is to look at the ordinance after we're through this process. So I would like to give us a little more time and look towards a March date for this kind of activity, if that's possible.
And I think we can still continue this conversation with Page and Turnbull. I mean, maybe they've obviously witnessed this event that we've been focused on. Maybe they can help us discuss our ordinance and the effectiveness of it as well, just because they add another layer of expertise. Or not.
All right. Let's continue on to the approval of minutes. Does that sound good at this point? Okay. Yes.
I'm sorry, I feel like I'm interjecting. Can we discuss another item? I mean, just between us after the approval of minutes, or approval of minutes, that's the end of the meeting?
No, we could discuss something else. Yeah.
I just wanted to point out that there's 3 board members that their term is expiring. I'm one of those board members that my term is expiring in March, I think end of March. So
we have 4.
I know it's Caroline, myself, and Michael, and Gogo. Yeah. So I just wanted to mention that, and I don't know if there's been any effort to recruit new board members, but March is January, February, March, pretty soon. So I don't know. I just wanted to make everyone aware of that fact.
I'll reach out to the city clerk and ask what the timeline is for beginning the recruitment and urge recruitment early and often, because you're right, it's not very far away and it does take time to beat the bushes for interested candidates.
All right, now let's do the meeting minutes. And this is the approval of the HRB draft minutes for the meeting from November 11th, 2023. Are there any corrections? Any comments? Yeah, that
On page 603, I seem to have gotten back to being chair. So 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph, Board Member Willis.
yes, it has you. Yeah, and Board Member Heinrich, it does have you down as absent that day. Yeah. Okay. Are there any other corrections? Okay. I'd like to move that we accept the minutes as corrected for the November, and actually, you know, I do have a correction. It's listed as November 11th in our packet and November 9th on the like meetings minutes itself. So just verify whether it's the 9th or the 11th.
It's the 9th.
The 9th, okay. So then I'd like to move that we accept the minutes for the November 9th, 2023 meeting as corrected.
And I will second that.
I think we can just all
Voice, yeah.
vote. Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
I'll abstain since I was not in attendance.
All right, do we have anything about the calendar we want to address? Ms. French?
Oh, sure. I'll put that back on the screen.
Amy, I also have a suggestion that in our prior minutes, we didn't, when we approved properties, we didn't necessarily go through the individual addresses. And I think it would be nice to kind of put an attachment to those minutes that actually listed the properties that were approved to go forward to council. Does that make sense?
For the January 25th is to show both the properties
No,
that,
not January. I mean, in hindsight, that I believe when in our minutes, I could look, in our last couple of meetings, when we've recommended properties go forward, we did the grouping and we did the exceptions, but we didn't necessarily articulate which properties.
I see, as spoken, that here, this address, that address. I see what you're saying.
So when you
Sure,
go back through the
sure.
minutes, it's not clear which.
I think we can do that. And certainly for possible as an attachment to this next meeting, if that won't confuse the issue, is to say which properties were voted on by the HRB that were not objection properties. I think
If we
that
can somehow go back and just make an attachment note to those minutes, because in 3 years, when you go back and look in those minutes, it's not going to be very clear.
Is there any other business?
This shows the meetings, upcoming meetings. And so one, there was discussion last time about in December about potentially canceling the meeting of February 8th because we are going to build up and have, quite a lot of input perhaps leading up to the meeting of February 23rd, that we might focus on that meeting for the month of February. And then as noted, we're going to have a lot of business in March following that meeting. So that was just a suggestion. We're still showing it here as a regular meeting date, February 8th.
I'm in favor of canceling that meeting. I think we're kind of wrapping up a project here in January. And then there's going to be a lot of opportunity to discuss the incentives later in February. And it seems like a kind of a natural break.
I agree.
I don't. I think that we could use it to kind of wrap a few things up, that it would be good to understand, you know, explicitly what the process is to add a line to the ordinance regarding owner consent. And, you know, sort of clarify if there is any incentives or things we can bring forward more clearly on our February 23rd meeting. I think an organizational meeting on the 8th would be a really good idea for us. I mean, it might not be totally, you know, major productive, but I think it could make the meeting on the 28th go, or not the 28th, the 23rd go really much better.
I appreciate one thing I would just remind the board that there was prior to this effort that we've had for all of these nominations, we had kind of a goal of having, you know, one meeting a month that was a public hearing, and in the chamber's full meeting. You know, I mean, regardless if we had an item that was like a project, just to keep in touch that way. But then the second meeting, or one of the meetings of each month, could be used for subcommittee members to meet. And I know there is at least one active subcommittee. We've learned that. And that second meeting of a month, or one of the meetings, could be, you know, on your calendars. It's a regular meeting, but instead used for the subcommittees to have some focus time and use that time. So that was just something I would remind you about.
I got to say, I still prefer we didn't cancel the February 8th meeting, that I think that we're sort of plodding along, you know, and we're taking baby steps. You know, we've got some properties we're going to send forward to council. But I think that sleeping on it for a month is not really in our best interest. I think that as a board, we need to sort of come together and congeal our ideas. And, you know, even if we're moving forward, like, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, we need to keep moving.
I agree with Caroline. I would like to see the February 8th meeting, because the more we discuss things, the better informed we are.
Can we defer this? Okay. Any additional business? All right, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.